Hello, everybody. My name is S.K. Gupta, and I'm going to talk about a special vessel called the Sea Shadow. It was the world's first stealthy ship. It was a classified program, and classified program means that it was black. It didn't exist for years, and we finally took her out on Easter Sunday, 1993. First time she saw daylight, and I'm going to talk about her design, her operations, her construction, in other order: design, construction, operation, and then how ultimately, what happened to it and its legacy. That's the most important. Its legacy as to how it has made a difference in the design of warships all the world over. I'm going to try to talk slowly so my accent is a little controlled, but if you do hear an accent, please remember that I didn't have one till I came to this country. So the Sea Shadow was built in 1983. She was retired from in 2006, and then she was destroyed basically in 2012 to preserve its classified nature. And so I'm going to talk about how it's all started. You can see here a big picture view of the program history. It was started back in 83, and we did a lot of signature performance testing. After that, the data indicated that we should do some more testing, and so the ship was reactivated and modified in 1992, 93, and we took her out for more testing. And while all the signature was collected and data was analyzed for years, we also got an opportunity to operate with the Navy and try different tactics, etc., and see its seaworthiness, because this was a unique ship design. And I'll talk about that also a little bit. So the beginning was, it was, so I want to mention that when you have a classified ship, is that doesn't exist, it is hard to talk about, discuss. You can't even tell anybody what you're working on. When your friends ask you, so what are you working on these days? Either usually say, if I tell you, I have to kill you. That's the usual joke. So we had this pin that we lapel pin that we made up, and you can see the logo here. And we use this as a code for each other when we were, with the customers, whether it was our contractors, to basically indicate that we were briefed into this program. Even though we couldn't talk about the program during the classified phase anyway outside a very secure facility, we could at least recognize each other and say, okay, I got it. I recognize the pin. The stealth programs were started by Dr. William Perry when he was the head of DARPA. And his official title was Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. He started the stealth aircraft program, the F-117 at Lockheed Martin Skunk Works in Burbank. The first flight was 1981. And the stealth ship was originally a large warship, but the administration changed in 81. Jimmy Carter took over, and the new administration decided that instead of building a large stealth ship, they were going to do a prototype SWAT ship. And I'll talk about what a SWAT is. And it leverages the F-117. If you look at the front of F-117 and the Sea Shadow, you'll see similarities. And there was the first prototype SWAT ship built in Hawaii called the SSP Kaibalino. So they leveraged that, and they moved the program from Skunk Works, which was really focused on aircrafts, to advanced marine systems in Sunnyvale, the Bay Area, to leverage the marine technology and engineers, naval arts, marine engineers, systems engineers who were based in the advanced marine systems. There was also supposedly a third program called Stealth Cruise Missile, which has never been declassified. I only have told by hearsay that it existed, so I'm going to leave it blank and not talk about it. So one of the first challenges of a black program is where are you going to build it? And to build a ship is not easy, so which you can hide. Fortunately, the team thought of the Hughes mining barge. The Hughes mining barge, HMB-1, you can see it off Southern California, was built to work with the Global Explorer. At one time, it was the world's largest submersible, and you can see how it worked. It sank down to the bottom of the floor. The Glomar Explorer came on top and picked up the claw that would pick up the submarine. The program, there's a lot of stories about the program. You can even watch videos on the Azorian. I'm not going to talk about it. So the barge was saved actually. The barge was planned to be sunk and made into a fishing reef. So the barge was saved. They put a gate on one side. They put the helicopter pad on the other end. And the helicopter pad was designed and built by Lockheed Shipbuilding in Seattle. And I was there. I was working in Seattle those days. And we had no idea what we were designing and building the helicopter deck for. But we built it, shipped it, and years later when I showed up in Sunnyvale, I said, I recognize the helicopter pad. So in 1974, it was built for one-time use. The tanks were not painted, nothing. They were designed for one-time use and then to be destroyed or sunk or something. So let's talk about design and construction. So you can see here, this is a very unique looking ship. This is what makes it a SWAT, the Small Waterplane Area Twin Hull. See them both here. And there are now a number of SWATs. I would guess about 50 different SWAT ships are out there. Different countries, Japan took a lead on commercial SWAT ships, Mitsui company. And but most of them are A-frame, and I'll show you a picture of an A-frame SWAT ship. This is the world's only, those are H-frame. This is the world's only A-frame SWAT ship. You can see that. So what happens with a SWAT ship is that any ship, whether it is a monohull or a catamaran, reacts to the waves of the ship based on the waterplane area. So the smaller the waterplane area, the less the reaction. In addition, on this ship, they decided not to use a rudder. A rudder would be back here somewhere, and you can imagine the structure that would have to be built to support the rudder. To put a rudder there would really mess up the weight of the ship. So what they did was they came up with a canard and stabilizer system, which are remotely controlled, computer controlled from the bridge. And using those, the ship can turn and actually can, as they say, you can turn it on a dime. The top deck is very narrow. There are these, 3 hatches here that can be closed. And actually, there's 1 hatch on the side. So you can see the ship's configuration. So the ship was built as modular construction, which is now not so uncommon. But back in 1983, it was still in the beginning stages in the US. It was being used in Japan a lot. The advantage of that was that because this was a black program, we could send it to 4 different fabrication facilities, and no 2 adjacent modules were sent to the same facility. So if module 11 and 10 would go to one, and 6 would go to that one, and ones in between would go to different facilities. This prevented them from figuring out what was being built. They had no idea what was being built. The steel was also unique steel using HY100. You can see the pictures during the construction. This is inside the barge, and you can see the roof of the barge. The team used to work with the DoD to on moonless nights with the the DoD NRO would tell us no Russian satellites on top. We would open the roof and drop in the pieces of that had been, modules that had been constructed, then close the roof and then assemble it inside. So you can see this module being dropped in this place here. And that's how the entire ship was built inside this. And it was exceptionally successful in staying invisible for over a decade. You can see more constructions here. So the barge basically decided the barge size constrained the size of the sea shadow. You can see here on the sides of both of them. I mean, this is the between the barge wall and the sea shadow. The only thing there is this rubber fender. That's the only width that was margin on both sides for the sea shadow to come and go inside the barge. Christening March 1985. We had, as you can see, a number of retired US Navy personnel at Lockheed Martin. And we still have very, very good relationship with the US Navy. In addition to testing the technology of a SWAT ship, an A-frame SWAT ship, a reduced configuration SWAT ship, we were also doing wave reduction. We're trying out how can we reduce the wave of the ship. The wake of the ship is like a fingerprint for a ship. By the wake of a ship, you can identify the ship. So the more wake you can reduce, the harder it is for someone to identify. So the lower hulls were towed out, and the lower hulls were also Coke bottle shaped. You can see here. And so all this helped in reducing the wake of the ship. The computers programs in 1980, the computers in 1983 were mostly mainframe computers, but the team did an outstanding job with working with the IBM computers that were available back in 83 to do all the controls for the ship, like computer control. In 1992, when we reactivated, we did upgrade the computers to the new technology. Here you can see the pictures of the canards and stabilizers. You see the markings on the side, all the pluses and dashes. These were used to measure the wake and the height of the waves on the side of the hull. And you can see the propellers here. The propeller construction is a very unique business. You can't just go to any shop and say, make me a propeller. Propeller design and construction is unique. However, there are only a handful of companies, and you can't really go to a company and say, make me a specialized propeller. So, and without having to tell them where it was going, but we did. And the team convinced this propeller maker to not ask too many questions, and they paid for the propellers in briefcases of cash. I'm told, I wasn't there that time, I'm told that when they went out the first night to test, the wake was terrible. And they came back and figured out that their propellers had been installed in reverse. So they changed the propellers back to where they were originally designed to be, and then the problem of a strange wake went away. You can see the lower hulls. This is one end of the lower hulls with the ramps for the canard stabilizers going through. Here is the rear end this is a diesel electric engine. The twin diesel engines are on top, and the electric motors are down below. The team was very proud of the cleanliness of the ship. You can see here the uniform, the Navy uniform people came down and basically climbed up and down the ladders and never got any smudge or stain on the uniforms. They were really very complimentary. You can see Mike Holt, our chief engineer here. One of the good things about our program was the engineers who designed the ship, who basically spec'd out all the equipment, were the ones who were involved in installing it And then when we went out to sea, they were the ones involved in operating it. So whenever there was any hiccup, and all machine parts have hiccups once in a while, um, they were the ones who designed and installed it. So we didn't have to call anybody, we didn't have to fix anybody, and we managed to uh, basically be available all the time that the Navy wanted us for testing. So testing. So in 1993, we went out for testing again. You can see this is the ship. The barge is being flooded. It's a, it sinks down and the water, comes in. Once the gate is open and it's flooded. Once it floats, then it goes out under its own propulsion. Here, the barge, the Sea Shadow is inside the barge, being towed out to Santa Cruz Island. And Santa Cruz Island has extensive US Navy radar test facilities, different frequencies, etc. And they test a lot of US Navy ships out there. So this was an ideal facility for those who have ever been to Santa Cruz Island recently. It was not like this back 28 years back. 28 years back, we had two facilities there, one on top, one at the bottom, and one cook in each of them, and the cooks were off the streets, so having to stay there for weeks at an end with really minimal food was a challenge. And mode of transportation was a helicopter from mainland. Santa Cruz Island is off Santa Barbara, Oxnard, and so we used to travel by helicopters back and forth. So let's talk about the real reason for creating Sea Shadow was to see if in this marine environment, you remember marine environment is very, very corrosive. In the marine environment, we could do something to reduce the cross-section of a ship. As you can see here, a ship's cross-section is way high. You can see a ship from miles, on the radar. Even a tank is out here, which is pretty high, and a human being's radar cross-section is right out here. I can't tell you the exact radar cross-section number for the Sea Shadow because it's still classified. But what I am allowed to tell you that we could put a Coke can on the deck of the Sea Shadow and measure the RCS of the Coke can. So just think about that. If you can measure the RCS of a Coke can, then the background RCS has to be lower than the RCS of the Coke can. So, somewhere in this range was a Sea Shadow signature. So all ships have 5 signatures. Visual at night, because she was painted black, she was totally invisible. RCS I talked about. Wake, we basically reduced the wake dramatically with the ship design and not having the radar, the rudder at the back. We measured the ship's wake and the wake signature using national technical means, which was a buzzword those days for satellites. For thermal, the biggest signature for a ship's thermal signature for a ship is the heat generated by the engines. So the exhaust of the diesel generators were vented below the lower deck, so you didn't see the heat outside. By the time the exhaust dispersed, the temperatures of the exhaust has gone down a lot. For acoustics, the ship was usually the biggest noise for a ship is its propeller, and because of when it moves in water, as well as the engine noise. The engines were mounted on special mountings up on the upper deck, so the vibration of the ship's engines did not transmit to the water. So when we were asked by one of our friendly country CNO who came out to visit the Sea Shadow about the signatures, we could confidently tell them that this was the lowest signature measured at the Santa Cruz Island for all different signatures. You can see this is a very, very old slide, but to me, this is the most important slide that explains how how unique and how special the design of the sea shadow was for our CS reduction. Uh, the Navy asked us to go take the sea shadow and do some sea testing, sea state testing, and she was designed to operate in sea state 4 and survive in sea state 5. So we went looking for rough seas. We discovered if we went 100 miles this way, we would find real rough seas. And I kept telling them that, I can see the waves are high, sea state 5, but they had like 34 computers on board. These are the Navy scientists. And they would keep saying, not yet, not yet. It's not a fully risen sea state 5. About 2:30 in the morning, they said, okay, this is fully risen sea state 5, and they dedicated it to me because I was the test director who was driving all this. We also had a frigate with us and a Coast Guard cutter and a ocean-going ship. When we got to sea state 5, the frigate was rolling over 30 degrees each way. The Coast Guard cutter said they had mechanical problem. We don't know whether it's true or not, but they called timeout and they went home. The Navy frigate said, we don't need this. They turned around and went home. Sea Shadow and the ocean-going tug were the two that stayed out there. And during the roughest of sea, the Sea Shadow's movement was maximum of 3.5 degrees each way. You could actually put a glass full of Coke on the bridge, and didn't have to worry about it falling down or even the water shaking inside the glass. It, as it says here, it exceeded all expectations. We came back to San Francisco Bay Area, and we got permission to operate during the day in the Bay Area. So we planned it for 3 days, and you can see here, the Alcatraz Island, island back here, coastline, sailing boats, etc. Most of the photos you will see of the Sea Shadow are during this period, and while we were in the bay operating during the daytime. You can see here on the Sea Shadow, we put radar reflectors, etc., on here so that other boats, other ships could see us. It was funny, we were operating there and our code name was Bronco. When one of the pilots who was bringing a ship inside the harbor, inside the bay, called out to us and said, Bronco, Bronco, I hate to tell you, but I can see you on radar. And we had to tell him, yep, that's okay. We have radar reflectors so that you can see us for safety. Dr. Perry, by that time in the new administration, was the Deputy Secretary of Defense, and he then later became the Secretary of Defense. He had especially asked that he come out and see the Sea Shadow. And he really kind of charged up the gangway of the barge, and he asked that the Sea Shadow be brought in while he was watching it. So you can see here the Sea Shadow is being brought in while he's watching here. And that's young me out there. While we were taking Dr. Perry out, the Vice Admiral who was hosting him was doing a briefing in the middle of the ship. And I got a call on the radio from the ADC to Dr. Perry that he wanted Dr. Perry on the bridge because we were at the Golden Gate Bridge. And so I whispered to the Vice Admiral, and the Vice Admiral actually told me to F off. And so I told the Colonel, and the Colonel said, got it. And the Colonel came down, whispered in Dr. Perry's ears, and Dr. Perry called timeout, and they went up to take pictures of Dr. Perry around the Golden Gate Bridge. And the Admiral blew a fuse. He was Vice Admiral, pretty senior guy. He blew a fuse and yelled at me and yelled at the ADC. And the ADC was a colonel and looked him straight in the eye and said, Admiral, I can get you the Pentagon anytime, but I can't get the Golden Gate Bridge there. And he turned around and walked off, and Admiral calmed down after that. Uh, After this, the Navy asked us to get ready for operating with the fleet during war games. So they asked us to paint the ship gray. So now we are Navy gray. And I do want to show you my hat somewhere. So this is the old hat that we used to have till we became the Navy gray IX 529. And so this is the Navy's IX 529. We also at that time moved from just the pins to coins. So you can see the coins here, that we had Sea Shadow coins that Naval Sea Systems Command approved of. And we went out and did war games. Once these two hatches were closed, we at night, during the day, of course, you can see us, but at night we became invisible. We operated with impunity. That's the best word that describes us. We could sneak up to any ship, any time at night, and my friend Dennis Laflamme would open the hatch. He would pop his head out and shoot three green flares, and the captain would call out the ship that we were shooting at and say, incoming, incoming, incoming. And, we were a little obnoxious because we could take out destroyers, we could take out aircraft carriers, we could take out anybody we wanted to. Of course, we had no guns. We had no missiles, no guns, even though you'll see that later on. The only time we had a gun on board was when the bodyguard to Dr. Perry came on board, and he asked me, he says, so what's the rule about guns on this ship? And I asked him, do you have one? He said, yes. I said, you have the gun, you make the rules. Because that was the only time, we had never even thought about it. So that's the only time we had a weapon on board. Other than that, there was never any weapon. The Navy SEALs came out to practice with us, both in Santa Cruz Island, you can see here in the old black ship, and also out in San Diego. And they used the Zodiacs and jet skis, and they would hide in the belly of the Sea Shadow at night. We would sneak up to the target on a coast. They will zoom out in the Zodiac or the jet skis, go attack the coast, and come back and disappear. Because once you were inside the belly of the Sea Shadow, you could not be seen by any radar out there. Press coverage and legacy. So you can see this is what I meant by, back in 1993, this rag, basically advertised that there was enough nuclear missiles to blow every major city on earth to Kingdom Come. No, not true. We got in 1994, we got the Popular Mechanics Design and Engineering Award. In 2009, Wall Street put out a front page article on the Sea Shadow, and they quoted me extensively in that. And in 2012, there was this book that came out, Uncommon Warriors, and they chose to put the Sea Shadow on the cover. You can see the belly of the Sea Shadow here much better in this photo. All other different publications on their cover pages, the Electronic Defense, Naval Forces, Yachtsman. I mean, everybody had us on their cover. My favorite one, which I have this report in my files, was a Russian article, a report actually, a paper on the Sea Shadow called Shadows at Sea, and it was translated back to English by Office of Naval Intelligence. And as I promised some of you, there is James Bond in this presentation. See the stealth? No. Getting late. This is the last cove in the bay. Yeah, that's it. This was a small mock-up that they had done to, do that A-frame swath. So if you ever see this movie again, there is a bad guy has a computer jock, plump guy, salt and pepper beard, and listen to his name. He's called Gupta throughout the movie, and the bad guy shoots him at the end of the movie. That was a contribution of my customer who was a consultant to uh, the movie post his Navy career. So legacy. So this is where I was talking about the H-frame SWAT versus the A-frame SWAT that the Sea Shadow was. You can see here the Tiegos 19 class ships. They are very stable ships at sea. They tow a surtax, about a mile-long sensor that listens for submarines, uh, any kind of submarines, whether Russian, Chinese, Japanese, um, U.S. any submarine. They use the same technology of using the uh, stabilizers and canards because all of our patents are available for free to the U.S. Navy. You can see this is really the legacy of the Sea Shadow. You can see here the new destroyer USS Zumwalt class, so different than what you saw in the Navy ships from all the last 300 years of Navy ships. And this is now totally signature reduced and dramatic different slopes and angles as opposed to the curves that used to reflect the radar very, very easily. Here's another one. This is the littoral combat ship USS Independence. You can see again here the surface. This is a catamaran, and you can see the different angles of the sides, etc., front to basically deflect the radar cross section. We continue to work with the SEALs Mark V especially on the design and construction of Mark V patrol boat, and we work with them to show them how some tactics, like instead of going straight away from a target after they have accomplished their mission, if they go out at a 45-degree angle, their signature would drop off the radar much, much sooner. They didn't believe us. So we did some testing out there. We did operations out in Santa Cruz Island with them. And they finally realized that just a change of direction would make them disappear so much faster. So for us, all of us who worked in the Sea Shadow, our biggest legacy, the legacy is our success, is the success of the Sea Shadow program. All good things must come to an end. So the Navy tried to give the Sea Shadow and the barge to a museum, but the cost of maintaining the barge was just too high for any of the small maritime museums that are out there. And the Navy finally decided to demolish the Sea Shadow inside the barge, and the barge is now used as a dry dock out in Alameda. This is a picture I was just happened to be going on a ferry earlier this year and saw this and recognized her, even though it doesn't say anyway HMB1. And my son said, "How do you know it's HMB1?" I said, "I climbed up and down these stairs plenty of times to know this is HMB1." So we haven't really ever acknowledged all the people who made the Sea Shadow a success. So I want to take the time to acknowledge all these people who really were awesome in making this the success that it was. Admiral Tross was the CNO during the build time. He was the sponsor, he was the chief sponsor. And during the reactivation time, Vice Admiral Reynolds was the operations sponsor. Again, Captain Percival was the NAVSEA program manager during construction. Paul Chatterton, who was the one who was a consultant to the James Bond movie Tomorrow Never Dies, was the civilian program manager during the reactivation and operation. Commander Chuck Gordon was the deputy program manager. He later became promoted multiple times and became the rear admiral and program manager for the DDG-1000, the USS Zumwalt. Art Reed, Dr. Art Reed was a lead for all the analysis and from David Taylor model basis. On the Lockheed side, Captain Davis, Mike Davis was the original program manager. Dick Paquette was the original chief engineer that later became the program manager. We refer to him as the program manager emeritus. He has more knowledge and material about the sea shadow that most of us even want to see. Don Young was the guy who actually hired me in Lockheed Shipbuilding in Seattle, and he was the deputy program manager for the reactivation. I started as chief systems engineer, then became test director and deputy program manager. Dr. Bob Narbudas was awesome in doing the analysis of all the data that was collected. He and his team would define what they wanted, how, and then we would basically, drive the targets to their specification. They would collect the data and then spend years analyzing it. Ken Krug was the original HMB1 program manager for one-time build. Terry Schmidt was the hull form ship dynamics guy. He was the guy who came up with the no rudder and using the canards and stabilizers. Cy Joseph was the guy who did all, using the computers of 1983, did all the advanced ship controls. And Larry Small was the HMB1 manager from the days of Glomar Explorer till we retired, till he retired. There are also many other organizations which are still classified that we can't talk about it, individuals that can't even acknowledge that they worked on the sea shadow. So I want to acknowledge and everybody who contributed to make this a success. Very briefly, sometimes some things happen for the right reason, and Sea Shadow was for me it showed up at the right time, right place, right point in my career. And I, love to say that but for Sea Shadow, my career would not have been as good as it was. This is a rare photo of the Sea Shadow at the pier. Most of the photos of the Sea Shadow are inside the barge. And this was done specifically for some acting admirals, some in-service admirals who were flying out from from Pentagon to review the Sea Shadow during the war games. They heard the stories about how successful it was during the war games, and they wanted to come out and check it out. And so a number of them came out, so we did this for them so they wouldn't have to climb up and down the barge. This is an official video from the Program Executive Office of the US Navy. It's a little long, so I am not going to show it other than just for the first couple of minutes, just so you get a flavor of what the message is. You see, it was not a small ship. It was a small ship, but not a boat. People often ask how fast did it go? And, we used to easily do 13, 14 knots. And, cruising speed was more like 10, 11 knots. On Good Friday at 5 p.m., the Pentagon decided to advise all the press in their cubicles, in their mail slots, that there was something called the Sea Shadow. And they had all gone home, and we came out in the white on a daytime operation on the Easter Sunday, and we really had no press. We managed to get a Reuters guy to come out. We chartered a helicopter for him, and all these photos are taken during that time from the helicopter. I do want to mention this. You see here on the side, this is a magnetic sticker that we got to put on the side of the ship with this name Sea Shadow. And when we were doing new measurements with this here, the radar cross section just jumped off the charts, and we couldn't figure out what had happened. And after a few hours of analysis and thinking through all this, we said, "Oh man, we put those magnetic stickers there." And those small magnetic stickers, about this long, were caused havoc with the RCS of the sea shadow. You see the Coast Guard cutter that went out with us. Coast Guard were great at keeping this area safe from fishermen because this is a good fishing area. And after a few warning boardings for safety inspections, the fishermen said, "Not worth it, we'll go somewhere else." The rumor before we came out during the daytime from the fishermen was that they were testing out a flying submarine. So there's more of the similar stuff, but I'll stop at this point and wrap up the presentation. And I thank you all for taking the time to watch this and to listen to this. And I hope you enjoy the story. This is a story that had never been told. And I am glad I had the opportunity to share it with all of you. And you can see behind me, the Revell even took out a model that you can now buy on eBay of the Sea Shadow. I like it so much that I haven't even opened the box yet. I have kept it sealed over the years. You can also see the big poster that I keep on my wall, which I've moved here just so that it'll be part of the Zoom thing. With that, I thank you all for listening to us, and take care, and look forward to sharing another interesting story another day.